Today on the show, I had the pleasure of speaking with Andrew Schutsky. Andrew is the founder of Redline Equity, a real estate syndication firm that specializes in acquisitions, improvements, and management of large apartment buildings. He also has over 15 years of real estate investing experience, and he actually began his experience doing a house hack on his first home back in 2007. I'm definitely going to dive into that today for all you listeners out there who want to do house hacking. He is in the multifamily space. He's currently involved as both an active GP and an LP in over 1,100 units. And he's also the host of the Crushing Cashflow podcast, which you can find on iTunes. And I've had the pleasure of being a guest on his show, so definitely go check that out. And in addition to all that, Andrew works in the technology space. He is a CIO, the Chief Information Officer for a $700 million medical technical business, technology business, I should say, based out of Pennsylvania. G'day, Andrew. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today, mate?
Doing great, man. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Hey, man, my pleasure. And again, thank you for having me on your show. I encourage all the listeners to get over there, research it on iTunes, and it's just Google your name, and I'm sure it'll come up. And we'll have all the links from your side of the pond on our show notes as well. So at the end of the show. But guys, let's get into it. So the first question I like to ask all my guests that come on the show is rewind the clock and tell me how you made your first ever dollar as a kid.
So it's funny. I find myself reliving my experiences through my kids who are now 6 and 8. And I take myself back to that same age, or maybe my daughter. And I remember shopping the neighborhood, selling candy door to door. And that was my first kind of dose of dopamine around entrepreneurship. And honestly, since then I've been hooked. I did, bouts of DJing at my kindergarten and first grade dance. I sold and installed car stereos through the years.
Oh, wow.
It was really just trial and error, but I was always chasing something new and something exciting for me. That's how it really started. Right.
And walk us through your background into the world of real estate. I mentioned in the intro that you currently have a W-2 job, and we're going to get into the nuances of balance, and we'll talk of, the big topic of today's show will be around balance. But walk us through the sort of uni days and coming out and getting a job and then wanting to gravitate towards entrepreneurship and specifically real estate.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I started my professional career just like probably thousands of others listening. I came out of college, technology degree, always had a passion for technology. And within the first 6 months of working, I had one profound insight, really. Well, actually a couple. One is I didn't want to do this entirely forever. I didn't want to do the typical, hey, work till you're 64 and a half, whatever the 401k distribution age is, and wait until that point to have some freedom, right? And I also knew I was very passionate about real estate, always had been from my probably really grade school years, following along. My grandfather had a sixplex at the time. I was like, hey, this is really cool. Didn't really know what to do with all that energy. So fast forward to my first year out of college, I was actually in management consulting. So if there's listening or familiar with that type of career profession, I was on the road 50 weeks a year, just grinding day in, day out. I really wasn't home a lot. I'm like, wow, my house is sitting idle and empty. Why don't I put an ad out on Craigslist, which at the time seemed maybe creepy to my wife or my fiance at the time, but nevertheless, it actually worked out really well. I found a guy who was willing to come in. He had an opposite schedule, right? So he was in town in Delaware. I was during the week. And on the weekends, he would go home. So we really never saw each other. And I'm like, wow, let's put some cash in my pocket. Why don't I try scaling this a bit from house over house? And I started looking in Delaware and Philadelphia area. And I quickly realized the amount of capital you needed from an individual perspective was monumental, especially being in your early to mid 20s. You're not making, unless you're really, really fortunate, $500,000, $1 million a year, because you're needing, $250,000 to close each one of these properties. Cash flow was slim. So I was like, okay, fast forward another 4 or 5 years. Let me try a different angle. I really like the beach and, vacation stuff. Let me try the vacation and short-term rentals. And that started to click for me. And I still do that actually a bit. The limiting factor there for me was, again, cost of deploying capital is very high. The ability to scale and kind of free your time up while working a job was really, really limited. It continues to be limited. A lot of pros around that space, but really my burning desire was to kind of rebuild what normally you'd have in a pension 10 years ago, right? And build that and accelerate that journey to have some freedom and flexibility into your late 40s, early 50s to do whatever you want, right? I'm fortunate to be in a position where I really enjoy my day job right now. A lot of flexibility, work from home, get to travel to cool places. But inherently, there's a couple things that come to mind there. One, you don't control your own destiny. And two, you never know when your perspective or outlook may change on that journey. So why not plant some seeds now? Fast forward to the 2019 timeframe, I stumbled across this massive thread on Bigger Pockets, a site you may have heard of.
Yeah, just a little site. Just
a little bit. Yeah, it's a little blip in the radar. I don't know, a few million.
Just a startup, just a little blog, like a mom and pop blog.
Yeah, you may just Google it. You may get a couple of hits there. Anyway, I found this 60+ page thread on there while my wife and I are on vacation. And I'm like, this is what I've been looking for. This multifamily journey. I found the story of a local syndicator who lived down the street from me, ironically, was a CPA, corporate professional, enjoyed what he did, but really found this niche. At the time, it doesn't seem like a niche to you and I, because we're in the midst of it. But for those listening who may not be familiar with this multifamily investing, commercial real estate side, a lot of the cons I found in the single family and short-term rental space, this really addressed. A lot of the career accelerating opportunities that would kind of distance yourself from just your limitations of your own income and your own, personal time commitment were offset. And there was new possibilities being carved out, like a light bulb went off. From that point, I, hired a mentor, joined several mastermind groups, and just really, pushed my way into finding the first few deals together with partners. And from there, the next couple of years, it's, a lot of different deals, a lot of different partners, and meeting lots of great people like yourself in the journey. So,
mate, it probably resonates a lot with people listening to the show. It obviously resonates with me because I have been there. We've all start out, and we before we press record, we're like, you can't avoid this part of where you're at right now. This is building stage. It's I've stumbled across it. I'm passionate about it. Oh crap, I can't just go leave my day job tomorrow, right? I've got to build something from scratch. And that is this sort of, call it gray period, where you've the blinkers have come off. You want to do more and be in it 24/7, but you also got to keep the roof over your head. You got to keep the kids fed. You got to keep the missus happy. Like all those things still matter. And so today, in today's show, I want to get into that balance, because I've been there, and I can talk about some of the trials and tribulations that I went through, but I want to hear like where you are right now. How's it going building something? Just give us sort of a sense to the listeners about where you've started and what you're doing. What does your week look like when you're trying to balance it all?
Yeah. And I know there's no magic bullet for everybody. So you got to kind of find what works for you. And for me, my schedule is pretty well set. I mean, life gets disrupted pretty much regularly, but I'm an early riser. I don't mind getting up early. I know that, I work a lot with Ireland and Europe in my day job. So I've got some quiet time to myself before the family wakes up, either during the day or during the weekends. Actually, I get those 2 or 3 quiet time hours before anybody in the house is up. And I try to take full advantage of that. And the key word there is consistently take advantage of that. So consistency is key. Sometimes it feels like I go 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time, and I'm putting all this work in. I'm doing writing all these blogs, and launching podcasts, and it's like it's quiet, crickets. And then I might back off for a week or two. And then I start getting emails, engagement for investors. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Maybe this is working. So, sometimes you're putting in the work and the rewards aren't immediate. And that's part of this game. That's the one thing I've learned. One of the things I've learned is, keep the work coming consistently, whatever your schedule allows, whether it's, 5 to 7 in the morning or 7 to 9 at night or 9 to 12 at night, whatever your schedule is, know what the valuable activities you're going to engage in are, and stick to them consistently for a period of time, wherever. No, don't give up in a month or 2 or 3 or 6 months or even a year. It takes time to get results, right? And another tip I'd say for those listening is kind of know your niche. When I started out, I was trying to do everything, engage with brokers, find the deals, run asset management calls, work 50 hours a week, get the 2 kids off to school. And it's insanity. Honestly, my advice is don't put yourself through that. Pick one thing that you enjoy doing, can bring value to the majority of people in the business, and stick to that, and then master that for 9 to 12 to 18 months, and then move on to something else, right? As you feel you mastered that. But that would be my advice, is don't try to, cure cancer, solve the earth or world's problems in trying to do 4 or 5 roles while you're working the job. That's just insanity. It's setting yourself up for exhaustion.
Yep. No, I love what you said. And rewards aren't immediate. So many people start in this business. They start the podcast, they start the blog. They ultimately, we talk a lot about in the show, being a KPI, a key person of influence. If you've not read the book, Dan Priestley has written that book, KPI. I didn't make that up. But ultimately what you're doing is you're investing in yourself. You're creating a company from scratch. The way in which you're building that trust is through blogging, is through podcasting, is through, making sure you're building your email database, and starting from scratch, starting from zero. It is tough, and rewards aren't immediate. It takes time. And so many people I see start it. They want to start the podcast, or want to start the blog, or they want to, be a contributor to Bigger Pockets or whatever, to write books and constantly be a thought leader. It takes years, I think so many people think that, I've been at this for 6 months, nothing's happening. And it's like, you have to, if you're going to start a podcast or you're going to start a blog or some form or platform, you've got to give yourself a minimum of 3 years in my experience.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
But that it's the taking the bet, but then having the long-term vision, I should say, to say that this will take a period of time, because those rewards are not immediate. And we're both, if you're listening to this, we're both telling you we've both been there. It takes time. But what I'm interested about is, in and around what you said before about making sure you understand what niche you're in, right? And what you can, you can't solve cancer and the world's problems. Right. So how long did it take you to realize that? Like, was there a dark point in time where you're like, this can't work? Like, I'm going to burn out because this is not sustainable.
Embarrassingly, I think it took me 1.5 years to admit, because I have a DIY hands-on approach, go-getter, go after everything hard, and, quit complaining. And honestly, it probably took a little coercion from my wife too, to realize that, like, dude, you got to slow down, like, enjoy the journey. And honestly, it took, like you said, it took me 1.5 years to realize, hey, dude, that's kind of do a mind map of all the things that, like, took it on my whiteboard. It was probably in the February timeframe of this year. I'm like, let's pause for a second. I'm feeling stressed out. There's a couple of options: completely give up, which I'm like, it might feel good for the next week, but you're going to regret this decision. Or let's chart out 4 or 5 ideas or concepts or roles that you could fill. And let's highlight one thing that you could do well. So for me, I decided, hey, I'd love to engage on the investor relations, capital raising side. Let's go hard on that. Like, I clearly have no one really, I wouldn't say anybody's mastered this, right? You're always a student of the game, but, like, why not dial in your marketing, dial in your copy on your website, get all that stuff tighter and tighter, and follow those who are doing that really well. And then, let somebody else, partner with those who are willing or doing this full time, that have the energy and desire to go after brokers or, off market direct sellers or wherever you're generating your leads. Let them do what they do. And just realize it's going to take you a little bit longer time, but that's okay. That's completely fine. That's completely normal. You're not the first or the 10th or the 1,000th person to do this and make this realization. But, like, that's been my epiphany moment. Is like, holy crap. There wasn't one moment. There was probably multiple moments. I just wake up on a Saturday morning, I'm like, what the heck am I doing, man? Like, this is insanity. Like, why am I going through this? I already have a great job. Like, my wife's got a great job. Then I remind myself, like, hey, that flexibility you want 10, 15 years out, 5 years out, whatever the time may be, this is not going to happen on its own. So stay to the course. Let's dial it back for now, and just keep your eyes on the prize this few years out.
Mate, that's really powerful. And one word that I just wrote down in my book here is the word surrender, right? I think there's so many people, and I'm the same way. As entrepreneurs, you get so passionate about something that you're like, this is it. Again, the blinkers have come on. This is it. This is what I'm going to do. And you just throw everything against the wall. Everything. And it is burning you out. I've got a gray patch on the back of my head, and my wife said that's my real estate gray patch. And I'm 36 years of age, so I shouldn't be having any grays just yet. But the idea of just, like, doing it all. But I love what you said about taking that pause and realizing, 1, what are you doing it for? 2, that it's going to take you a bit of time. But 3, then also, how do I make it enjoyable so I can keep it going? Because ultimately, if you burn out too quickly and you want to give up, you're not good to anyone, right? You feel defeated because you can't go and you didn't achieve what you set out to do. So can you maybe just unpack that a little bit more? Because I think so many people want to hear. So what did you do? What like on your whiteboard, what did you do to say, like, okay, there's the underwriting, there's the asset management, there's the deal finding, there's, the capital raising, there's the marketing. How did you sort of break it down to come to the conclusion that I wanted to focus on this one thing?
I actually had fortunate enough to have access to a tool. It was kind of a planning tool through a mastermind program I'm part of, and it was a wheel. It kind of, for those that can see the visual, I'll just, for those that are only on audio, I'll describe it. It was a kind of a spoke and hub concept where you had just all the roles you just described, capital raising, asset management, deal finding, investor relations, yada, yada. You guys know all the different roles. And then on the outside was kind of your level of there was two dimensions. One, there's a line for something you enjoy doing. It's like from 1 to 5, how much do you enjoy doing it? And then from level of capability from 1 to 5, shade in what you're most comfortable, more capable, feel more capable doing. Sorry. And then you shade it into 2. And when you saw the biggest spikes between the correlation between those 2 axes, there were some ideas to like, hey, maybe I should focus on this or that. And for me, there's a couple of different areas, even like, social media and podcasting was another one. So I came to drill down on one. I said, look, I can always expand into the next darkest spear in the next, 6 to 9 months, but let's really dial in for this. Let's go hard. My commitment to myself was 180 days first. Let's find the deal. Let's start building that out more and more, and just focus my attention and energy on that one thing for now. And hey, the realization is going to be, you're not going to have a 50%, percentage of a GP going in, but you know what? That's fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's much better than burning yourself out, exhaustion, and taking 0% of zero.
It's so important you say that, because I have to mention it over and over again. I remember one of my old bosses at a real estate development company that when I was leaving that company to go pursue what I was going to pursue, he said to me, it's not about what you make in your first deal, it's about getting your foot in the door. And you have to always keep that in mind as you scale and as you do bigger deals, because a little bit of a lot is better than a lot of nothing.
100%.
And that is so important when you start focusing on it and understanding what your role is in the wheel. Does that wheel have a name? Because I'd love to direct people to that if they ever, they're sitting there, they're listening to this, they're struggling with this exact same thing. They're at the W-2 job. What was it called, and when they could go check it out?
I can grab that for you. You can put it in the show notes.
Sure, please do. Yeah, because I think I've got another one that I was sort of taught / learned, and it's the same thing, but it's in an X and Y graph, right? And the X is, what's the X? The X is moves the needle in the business. Yeah. Sorry, the Y is the move the needle in the business.
Yeah, I remember this.
And the X is on the, and then you got your quadrants, right? And then there's the black time, the blue time, the red time, and the green time. Yeah. And then it helps you. And I try and do that process once a year to recheck in to say, am I spending enough time in the black time, right? Of moving the deal forward. Now, in the beginning, you're in all the times, right? Now, but the goal is, as you grow and you hire out for roles, this Gantt chart helps you identify like that stuff in the red time. Yeah, you need to be finding someone who can do that for $15 an hour. Like, you shouldn't be doing like the podcast editing or the posting or the, whatever that might be. And as the business evolves, you've got to keep checking in on that. So I love that you have your wheel, and it's all wheels, charts, whatever it is, but it's a discipline, as you said earlier, of doing it, because you're just running in a direction. And you got to sort of stop and check in and say, what am I doing good and what am I not doing good? And
I should also add, like, the wheel is kind of your foundation. And then I just take it down to a weekly level of just what are my goals for the week? Doesn't have to be, monumental. What am I doing to build my business this week or next week? And if I have on my vacation or next week, let's double down the following week. Just keeping that consistency. It's much less overwhelming than saying, hey, I want to close 3,000 units and $300 million. And, let's break that down to a weekly, and that's checking. I like your idea of the yearly check-in, but maybe even biannually, like, hey, how am I tracking and what's being done? Do I need to dial up? Do I need to dial down? Am I happy with my progress? Yada, yada. You get the idea. Yep. So
I want to pivot and talk about the other side of the balance, the wife, the kids, the you as a human, how's that been? Because I know for me, and when I think back to my days when I was working full time at a development firm, which I was surrounded by real estate 24/7, plus I was doing my side hustle and the podcast and all the things. I only just about to have my first kid. I didn't have 2 kids. How's that been for you? Because that must be tough on the family front, and in creating the time to be there as a dad and as a husband and for yourself, whatever that you might, exercise or golfing or whatever that might be.
Yeah. No, like I said before, there is absolutely no magic bullet And as much of a structured agenda I think I may have for a week, life gets in the way, kids get sick, the wife will travel, and if it wasn't for an extremely understanding wife, there's just no way I could pull all this off. Right. And I have the flexibility in the job. I mean, that's where I think I have a unique advantage, and I'm very fortunate to have that. Not afraid to admit that if I had to be on the road every week, or I had to go in the office, 10 hours a day, it would be a lot more challenging. But for right now, having my wife and I both work from home, kids, we have great, childcare options for them. And for those that don't, definitely look at whatever options you may have available to you. Have parents who live nearby. We purposely stayed in this area to have help with the kids. That they're all part of my support system. And having for anybody trying to do this, you're crazy to think you could do it on your own. I mean, it just, without having that support structure in place, it just wouldn't be possible. I'm not afraid to admit that at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then what do you do to keep you sane? What do you like to do to wind down and blow off a bit of steam?
Yeah. So for me, exercise and specifically weightlifting and fitness has been a part of my life since I've been an early teenager. Right. So I think that mental exhaustion to me leads to mental refreshment. Right. So without that, that, and then I really enjoy, I'm a big automotive nut, hence the Redline Equity name and my company name, and electronics. So they've been all parts of my passions in my life. And when they all come together, it's great. But like, I love, talking hobbies with people, going out to lunch, traveling. And again, like I mentioned, the exercise has been in my DNA longer than anything. So
that's awesome.
That's what makes life fun.
Yeah, no, but again, the whole purpose of this show is about balance and showing balance across many pillars, because I speak again on the show a little bit, like I see so many people who focus on the business, and I was guilty of this in my early career path building, where I just focused on the business, that one pillar, and then relationships and health and family weren't being I didn't make them a priority. And I did a podcast years ago after my mum passed away, talking about goals versus priorities and having it more balanced, because if you lose that pillar of business and let's face it, there is that possibility, and you don't have the others balanced, the only way you're going to fall is down. So making sure you create the time in the week for the kids, to check in with the wife, to make sure you're showing up as a husband, as a partner, and even showing up for yourself, like making sure you're having some time on your own is so important when you are in this building mode, because we're all going to be wanting to scale. There's going to always be the next mountain to scale, right? And it's taking that time and that self-awareness to just I'm doing enough.
You took the key word right in my mouth. I think it is completely about awareness, and if you're not one that's self-aware, look to others to keep you honest, because I think no matter how great your plan is, how great your routine is, how much time you think you may be spending, I know that I fall behind just being present. Even the time I do carve out to my family, it's really hard for anybody that's working a job or in a business, trying to build a business, to have those thoughts consuming your mind day to day, right? So I think having a check-in with yourself, whatever your cadence is, probably daily is the right one. Am I being present to the people that I love and support me? And that's got to be number one. Is my health being interrupted? That's got to be right up there too. And if the answer is no, I got to make some adjustments. So being aware of when you need to make an adjustment, I think is absolutely key to sustaining success. Anybody can do stuff well for a month or two, but doing this for 10 years or 20 years and being happy while doing it is a whole different level.
Right. Do you practice any meditation, or, obviously working out is a form of meditation, but do you do anything else, journaling, reading,
I do. So my daily routine involves reading for sure every day, 7 days a week. I try to do 20 minutes. And also meditation. The key word here for me is practice, because I am not good at it, but I am trying to work at it. And for those that had read Atomic Habits, I've read it again and again. I really love that book, just for being able to stack these things and make them stick. I think the key word is stickiness there. So I try to get, even if it's 2 to 5 minutes in the morning and in the evening, it really just is it doesn't come easy to me. I know it doesn't come easy to others, but I really do try to practice just being present, breathing, simple stuff. It really does help with clearing your head. And I find that I sleep better too. So. Yes. No, if I don't get my 20 minutes or 15, 20 minutes of meditation every morning before I turn on the computer and the phone, all that sort of stuff, my day is off. Yeah. And I struggle through the day. So, mate, look, we're coming to the end of the show. We'd like to dive into the top 5 investing tips. You ready to get into it? Let's rip it, man. Let's
Mate,
do it.
what is the daily habit you practice to keep on track towards your goals? We might have already just answered it, but what is that number one habit?
I think for me, if I had to pick one only that's been with me for 25 years, it's been exercise. It's physical exhaustion just really makes me feel beaten down physically, but mentally refreshed.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'm physical as well. If I don't work out 5 days a week, I start to go a little stir crazy. So
I agree.
That's awesome. Who's been the most question number 2? Who's been the most influential person in your career to date?
You know, it's funny. I've had a lot of different mentors, both through the W-2 and through the building real estate business. And honestly, if I had to pick one, it was probably my grandfather or both of my grandfathers actually, who instilled that sense of entrepreneurship in me. And they may not realize this because they've been long gone for a while, but they planted the seed.
That's awesome. I love it. No, and it starts at home, right? It starts with seeing as a kid, growing up and seeing your uncle, your mum, your dad, your cousin do something that you're like, hey, this is interesting. This is a little bit unique. So awesome stuff. In your business, question number 3, what is the number one or the most influential tool that you use? And when I say tool, it could be a physical tool like a journal or a phone, or it could be a piece of software that you just can't run that business without. What is it?
So maybe I might pivot a bit in my answer, but maybe it's not a tool, but I would just say the power of consistent networking, whether through, a mastermind program or even doing through the podcast. I think the biggest unintended benefit there was just meeting new people, professional connections, friends. They just make life exciting. So networking and the various tools behind that to get it done would be my first pick.
100%. And I could talk for hours about how this podcast, I've been doing it for 7 years now. And
wow,
just the people I meet, right?
Yes.
And you see, I got a podcast to do this week. But every time I get on it, you get that new wavelength with the other person, and it's freaking awesome. It's like
it is really cool.
It's like a drug. Question number 4 is in one sentence, what has been the biggest failure that you've faced in your career, and what did you learn from that failure?
I'd say, man, it's hard to pick one. There's been quite a few throughout my journey, but I'd say, if I had to pick one recent, it was that epiphany I had a year back and just saying, I feel like I'm getting nowhere. I'm burned out. I feel like I'm struggling in family life. I'm struggling physically with health. I feel like myself getting sick more frequently. And if I took myself back just, maybe 6 months ago, it was that one Saturday morning just saying, I'm exhausted. I got to change what I'm working. I got to change what I'm working on. I change my priorities and just dial things back a bit. Yeah. So I know it's a vague way of saying it, but that's the most recent memory for me.
No, and what I mentioned earlier, the goals versus priorities, where do they show up in life? And I talk a lot about, and have been spoken about, goals sort of you have a time limit against it. And I remember someone telling me one time, does it matter when you're 70 years of age, sitting with your grandkids, if you've done 2,000 units in 2019 or 2025, it doesn't matter, right? As long as you're there to be with them. And that's the most important part. And even though we're all geared this way, we've sometimes got to just check in with ourselves to make sure that we aren't losing touch with reality. And it can get hard.
To me, it's just a stake in the sand, right? You got to have a North Star to work toward, but you got to make yourself aware that it's the journey, not the destination.
100%. Mate, look, final question for you is, where can people reach you to continue the conversation? They want to be in your sphere. Where do they go?
Easy for you guys. Everything funnels right through our website. It's investwithredline.com. We've got a free learning course on investing there. We've got tons of blogs out there. Our podcast is out there. So that's the one kind of funnel for everything. Investwithredline.com. Is that right? You got it.
Awesome stuff, mate. Look, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. I just want to reflect some of the things and thank you for being vulnerable with your journey. Just rewards aren't immediate, I think, is the number one thing I took away from today's show. Yeah. Rewards aren't immediate. Balance is important, and making sure that you're learning to understand and doing that check-in with your wheel, right? Your wheel or your Gantt chart, whatever it might be, but you're doing it consistently to know that you aren't trying to solve cancer and solve the world's problems all at once and keep a day job, because it is just not possible in this line of multifamily investing. And take it from me and from Andrew, we've both been there. Andrew's in it right now, but the building something from scratch will take time, and give yourself enough time to make sure you're enjoying the journey and you're not being burnt out. Did I leave anything out, mate?
You nailed it, man. You nailed it.
Stuff, man. Well, look, again, thank you so much for jumping on the show. We'll chat very, very soon, and have a great week.
Pleasure's on mine.
Well, there you have another cracking episode, jam-packed with some incredible advice from Andrew. Remember, if you want to get over to his website, it's investwithredline.com. He's got a ton of blogs and informational stuff over there that you can get your hands on and get your teeth stuck into and learn more about this incredible space. And if you just want to reach out to him and have a chat, he is in that the balance of the W-2 and we're building the business. There's so many people listening to this podcast that are in that space. I was there. Fortunately, I've graduated into the space full time, but you've got to start from somewhere. So if you are wanting to reach out to someone like Andrew, please don't hesitate, because he is an awesome dude and really down to earth, and I'm sure will give you a bit of his time. I want to thank you all for taking some time out of your day to continue to learn about your financial IQ, because that's what we do each and every week, and we're going to do it all again next week. So remember, be bold, be brave, and go give life a crack.